Entrepreneurs on born that brew. You are now listening to the Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney. Let's grow!
Welcome to the Entrepreneur Podcast. I am your host, Adam McChesney, and I want to thank you for being here today. If you're listening, please be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify. We would love for you to share this on social media by tagging me and our guests, and this way we can get this incredible content out to more people. Today, we have yet another great episode lined up for you. My guest and I originally connected last year, and I was actually a guest on his podcast, Enterprise Now. He's an incredible human being with so much to give, and we're going to learn a ton from this episode. After enjoying my conversation with him on his podcast and talking back and forth, I knew that I wanted to kind of bring him on the podcast and talk about everything he's done in his business, as well as what he's done previously. He's got so much experience and going to share a lot of wisdom and insights with you guys today. My guest today is Elzie Flenard. He is located in Wisconsin and brings over 20 years of entrepreneurial experience. He is the founder of Podcast Town, which is a full-service white glove podcast agency dedicated to helping their partners grow their podcast show, the audience, and the podcast overall easier. He is also the host of Enterprise Now, as I mentioned before. He is a speaker and author. Elzie, welcome to the show.
That's a very, very cool introduction. You make me sound like somebody who's done a couple of things in life. So I appreciate that. And I'm excited to be here and just looking forward to the conversation.
So one of the things that I really pride myself on is writing those introductions. Now, obviously, some people will be like, hey, no, do it this way. I like to kind of bring a little bit of both and systemize it in my way so it flows really good. But one of the things, like, and obviously you talk with podcasters all the time and you do your own podcast. One of the things I'm really proud of myself right now is just that I don't have to look down at it every single time, because I'm an episode, by the time this airs, probably close to 70. But I was thinking back to this time last year, like I was literally sweating up here, just getting through introductions, asking questions. And I pride myself on trying to get better each time as a podcast host, but really an interviewer and doing more research. So I feel like I've done that so far.
Yes. Fantastic.
Awesome, man. Well, I really appreciate you hopping on the show and excited to kind of dive into the entrepreneur process for your journey. And one of the first things that we'd like to talk about is obviously within beer, as we're comparing that to the entrepreneurial journey, is the history. So if you could give us a little bit of information about who you are, where you've been, and kind of that journey and what got you to where you're at right now.
Yeah, I was a little hesitant, Adam, to accept this, because I know it's all about brewing and the entrepreneur, and I'm dry. So I'm hoping you don't ask me any questions about beer, because I won't be able to answer that.
There won't be any questions there.
It's actually a part of my story, right? I grew up single parent home. My mom and dad divorced when I was about 6 years old, and I saw the effect that alcohol and drugs had on him and my family. And so I made that decision early on that was something that I didn't want to have as a part of my issues, because I would have plenty of other issues. But growing up, I knew two things. I knew I wanted to have a family, and I knew I wanted to own my own business. And so that set me on that path of figuring out, okay, what does that look like? And so fast forward to I got married to my beautiful wife, Victoria, had a couple of kids, and all the while I'm doing these side hustles and just could not figure out how to make that thing work so that I could quit my day job. And so I started a podcast so that I can learn from business people. And I'm happy to report that the plan worked. They gave me the tools, the shortcuts, the keys to success, and the don't do's and the do's that I needed to kind of make that transition. And so launched that, and one thing leads to another, bringing us to Podcast Town, where we're helping both individuals and businesses use podcasting to have a voice.
I love that. The coolest part, I think, about what you said, really even starting from the beginning, is that you were always willing to learn from experiences, both probably good and bad, to deflect of, or probably reflect of what you wanted your life to be and design your life around that, right? So you talk about not wanting to drink alcohol, having a beautiful family, like you from a very young age manifested that. And then as you progressed throughout life, you knew that you wanted to run a business and kind of have that be your thing. But more importantly, you were willing to do things that most other people probably wouldn't do, which is get on a podcast and start interviewing people and understanding that you don't have all of the information, but that other people do. One of the things that I love to talk about is condensing time. So whether you are absorbing information or you're paying a mentor or a coach or a mastermind or all these different things, so many people get it wrong because they think they have to have it all figured out. They think that they have to be the one that comes up with all of these amazing ideas and solutions, and it just doesn't have to be that way. And so I love that you kind of talked about condensing time by doing it in learning from other people. What were some of the side hustles, just out of curiosity, that you were doing up until you kind of really took off up until this point?
Yeah, I had a music production company. I'm a singer-songwriter, have been since I was about 5 years old. So I did that for a little bit. I had a record label. I owned a minor league basketball team at one point.
Wow.
I did it's almost like you ever see the royalty-free websites?
Yeah.
Well, back in that time, they weren't as popular. And so I would put my beats up there and then I would sell them sort of as a non-exclusive license.
Yeah.
So I've done that. I've done a lot of different things, but landed on podcasting just because I love telling stories and I love helping other people tell their story. And I love learning. I had a mentor that told me, Elzie, find your own potholes to fall into. Don't fall into the same potholes that I fell into. And so I took that advice to heart, and that's how I move and operate my business. I'm always trying to figure out how do I learn, how do I grow? Because ultimately what I want to do is live, learn, and teach, and then repeat.
Mm-hmm. No, I just love the methodology behind that. I love the philosophy. So love that. And kind of transitioning in here into our ingredient section. So within beers are great for ingredients. What are 3 things along your journey that have made you successful?
Man, just 3. Okay. So I wrote a book, not to plug the book, but these concepts come from the book. Okay. And it's called Flame Starter. And the reason I wrote this book is because I was working so hard. I told you before, I was working my day job, doing my side hustles all at the same time. And it made me physically sick. It made me burn out, and it made me really reconsider the direction of my life. And so some of the I call them Elzieisms. Be open to being shaped, be willing to zig and zag, and grabbing the lesson. Because when you're open to being shaped, you're coachable. You can learn, you can adapt. Being willing to zig when other people are zagging. Just because everybody is going left does not mean you need to go left. And then again, just grabbing the lesson. Bad things are going to happen. You're going to fail. I can guarantee you 100%. You do anything in this life, you're going to fail. Grab the lesson. So those are the top 3 that come to mind when I think about how I, even today, move throughout through life and through my business.
No, those are really solid ingredients. I think they all obviously flow in together, right? So I think you can start at either end of that spectrum and be able to grab a lesson after being open to being shaped while zigging and zagging and figuring out where that piece of information or that lesson can form you into a better person. And I think all of us probably at one time or another have been super focused on, I'm just going to go learn, right? I'm going to go learn, or I'm going to zig and I'm going to zag, and I'm going to be open to being shaped. But it's really tough to kind of bring some of those things together. And you can't necessarily have the full picture without kind of having some of those key ingredients together. So I love how you kind of talked about bringing it all together and the impact that each of those things have had, which kind of brings me to the next part about the overall brewing process. So obviously this didn't happen overnight. You talk about having a variety of different experiences between producing to record labels to a minor league basketball team, now to podcasting, all those things. So talk to us about entrepreneurial journey specifics, like the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows and kind of everything in between.
Yeah, I'll start with the highest of the highs. The minor league basketball team was probably the experience that taught me the most, because it was a concept that I've always wanted to do. And so I reached out, I did the research, I found the organization and put together the coach and the team and the rules and the opposing team. And so it was really exercising and working all the entrepreneurial muscles, right? Casting vision, putting a team together, getting a budget. How are we going to pay for this thing? How are we going to pay people? All those things. So that was a high to go to a game and see your vision in action. Like people are standing in the stands, they're cheering. The mascot is high-fiving little kids on the front row, and the players are able to do what they love, and they're on the floor, and the uniforms that you designed. And so everything has materialized, and you're looking at this thing, and you're looking around in the stands and in the venue, like, wow, this was a seed, a vision at one point, and now here it is. That was the pinnacle. It's like, okay, we did it. Now the valley to that is when it didn't work. And now I have to have those conversations with our vendors. I have to have those conversations with the players to say, hey, this didn't work. We have to stop this. It's over. To have to tell my wife, to have to face the business community. Right. Very, very public failure, to have to deal with the visceral and vicious remarks that you get on social media. Right. But again, it taught me so much about myself. It taught me how to fail, how to grab the lesson, how to be coachable, how to go in a different direction, how to pick yourself up and keep going. So that one sticks out for me because it taught me so much about the highs, how I operate when things went well. And it also taught me a lot about myself when things didn't go so well.
That's an incredible story. So how long ago was this?
This was 12 years ago now.
Okay. So I think, man, there's a lot of good information in there, trying to figure out where to start. So I think one of the biggest things that entrepreneurs that I talk to, and I've even dealt with this myself, is what you kind of talk about, the backlash on social media potentially. So you grow this brand, you grow the business, you're involved in the community, you're doing all of the things that you basically filed the plan and believed that it was going to pay off, right? And then it doesn't happen. Walk me through kind of your mindset and some lessons that you learned and kind of how you handle that situation. Because I think that in today's society, that is one of the toughest things that entrepreneurs go through.
Yeah, for me, I'm a man of faith. And so it always starts for me with prayer, like really just centering and understanding that no matter what happens, it's going to be okay. And not allowing it to be the end of the world, because the sun is going to rise tomorrow, it's going to set, and it's going to rise again the next day. So, and just realizing that, it didn't work. Again, not to go to be the dead horse, but grab the lesson. Why didn't it work? What things could I have done differently? Was it the market? Was it our marketing? Was it the operations? What piece of the puzzle could we have done better? And then you just began to really, I began to really just start to self-reflect and say, okay, is this something you want to do again? Can you handle it mentally, financially, emotionally? Or should you do something else? Should you take time off? Should you just work a day job for a little while? So for me, it's a process of self-awareness and really understanding where you are, where your heart is, and what's going to bring you joy, right? And being honest with yourself. Some people, we lie to ourselves and we get right back on the horse too soon. And it ends up taking a toll on us mentally, spiritually, and financially. So I spent some time. I didn't do anything for probably about 1.5 to 2 years, just a process of healing, really, and just reevaluating what's important and how I wanted to serve the world. So to answer your question, just taking baby steps day by day and just really being self-reflective and listening to those feelings. Like there were days when I was angry. Mm. I was angry because we put so much into it and people didn't appreciate it. Mm. I was sad because the vision died. I was, hopeless some days because it's like, okay, now what? But some days I was encouraged because it's like, okay, well, what's next? So it was a range of emotions. And really it was just a matter of sitting in those emotions and those feelings and thoughts and processing them and then putting them in their appropriate place. And then regenerating, refreshing, renewing, and then moving forward.
Mm. So much good information from there. So if you're listening to this episode, and I know I'm going to go back and listen to this, that last story about the highest of the highs and the lowest of the lows, and then the lessons that were grabbed from that experience in running that minor league basketball team. I mean, that to a T is entrepreneurship right there. And I love the fact that you were able to take some time off and do that self-reflection and figure out how you wanted, and you phrased it something along the lines of how you wanted to go and serve the world. And I think, I talk to a lot of people that just go from one idea to next. One thing fails, I'm off to the other thing. Or you take a particular aspect of your business and you're just running it into the ground. And you're like, I'm going to be very hard-headed and I'm just going to do it. If it fails, it fails. If not, then we're here. But there's plenty of reasons why taking time off, or whether it's a week or a month or even a quarter or 1.5 to 2 years, there's a lot of value in self-reflecting and understanding the situation, right? And you probably couldn't have been able to do that if you just went and jumped into something else. So what were some of the things, I know you talked about, you kind of learned a lot about yourself in that process. What were some of the things that you learned about yourself in that process as you took time off and reflected?
Yeah, the biggest thing is that I'm resilient. I'm built for this. Yeah. Entrepreneurship is not for the faint of heart. Mm-hmm. It really re-emphasized that you're built for this. This didn't work, but this is your path. It really taught me how humble I was, or needed to be. It taught me how to treat people in good times and how to treat people in times that are not so good. Mm. It taught me how to forgive people, the people who were not kind to me. It taught me how to communicate. Again, when things are going well, when things are not going well. It taught me that I am a visionary. It taught me that I am an operator as well. So I kind of skew on both sides. It taught me that anything that I do needs to be something that I care deeply about, that has a strong why to it. And it taught me again that this is my lane. Like I truly believe I was put on this planet to change lives through enterprise. That is why I'm on this planet. So those are some of the things that it taught me.
Fascinating that all happened with what people would refer to as a failure, right? But it was really grabbing the lessons and extracting those lessons from the situation to be able to be who you are today. And I bet, and you can tell me if I'm wrong, but there's no amount of money that you could have made in that 1.5 to 2 years that would have made up for all the lessons that you learned by taking time off and then implementing and finding your bigger purpose that you have today, if I'm probably correct.
Yeah, there's no doubt in my mind, had that worked well, I would not be half the entrepreneur that I am today. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. You learn more when you lose than you do when you win. When you win, you tend to not take the time to evaluate things as much. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, I won, so I don't need to work on anything. Or maybe I need to work on a little bit. But when you feel like that publicly, you break it all the way down to the bare bones. And you're like, okay, what do I need to do to get better at this thing so that even if the next thing I do fails, I'm not going to fail like that again.
Yeah.
So I think to your question, it was probably the biggest and best lesson of my life in terms of entrepreneurship. Because again, you learn more when you lose than you do when you win.
Amazing. This is an incredible episode. For those listening, like, go back and listen to some of these things. Again, as I mentioned, I'm going to go back and listen to various parts of this to really extract all the lessons, because there's so many. So as we kind of talk about the next phase of the entrepreneur process within this is fermentation and conditioning. So part of the process where you see the final results of a beer, figure out what needs to be changed in order to make it a little bit better. In the entrepreneur process, we talk about the biggest lesson that you've learned along the way, which you might have already touched on it, and no worries if you have, that you would then share with someone that could be an entrepreneur just getting started, or an entrepreneur that has been doing this for 10 years, to allow for them to save years worth of mistakes. Like, what's that one big lesson?
The one big lesson that I would share is listen to the market. There is a difference between what you think the market wants and needs and what the market actually wants and needs. And the market is brutally honest. It will tell you if it wants what you're serving or not. Do testing. Whether that's, for me, that was my podcast. It was selfishly, it was my mini focus group. I would ask questions. What struggles do you have? What challenges do you have? What service do you wish there were? Those types of things. So do your research and listen to what the market is telling you, because if you do those two things, it'll save you tons of time. It'll save you tons of headache and tons of money, because the market will tell you what the market needs.
That's an incredible lesson. I think it's one that so many people get wrong. And I talk with business owners all the time, and they're like, I have this incredible idea. I'm going to add this new service and go do this. Well, why? Oh, because I saw somebody else do it online, or I believe that there's a bunch of money to be made doing this. Okay, but is it actually a feasible thing for you in your situation, in your market, in your industry, and all of those different things? And most people don't take the time to actually take that step in order to do it. They just jump in, which is great, right? He can grab the lesson from it. But at the same time, if you can save time, energy, and money along the way and figure out the right thing at the right time, that's also super important as well. So love that lesson. Man, this is an incredible episode. Appreciate you, man. The last thing that we talk about here in this process is the distribution. So taking beer to the market and selling it, getting it out there. So talk to us a little bit about what's up next, over the course of the rest of this year and beyond for both you and your company, and kind of some cool things you have planned coming down the line.
Yeah, one thing that I'm really excited about is doing more talks and podcasts on Flame Starter, which is the art of self-mastery, because that has been the thing over the course of my career that has been the difference maker. The thing that when I'm really dialed into who I am, what I am, why I am, everything else seems to fall in place. My business, my personal life, all the stuff, right? It helps my mental health because I have this thing, Adam, I call it my joy meter. And it's a scale from 0 to 10. Okay. And if something falls below an 7 or 8 on my joy meter, I do not do it. If you are in my life as a friend, and when I talk to you, my joy meter dips, that's a signal. If it's a service, if it's a product, if it's, things are my business, if it starts to dip below that 7, 8, then I start to evaluate and cut things out. So I'm really excited about sharing more of that concept with people. I'm really excited about doing more original content through Podcast Town and teaching just literally, Adam, as many people on the face of this planet how to have their voice heard through the medium of podcasting.
Love that. I'm excited to continue to follow your journey. There's, again, so much information, if you're listening, that you can go back and extract from this episode, but be sure to connect with Elzie online, and we'll get to that here in a second. I'm telling you, he produces some great content. He offers some amazing services, but more importantly, he is just an incredible human being that is making some massive impact here in the world. So, Elzie, before we finish up here, let everybody know, and I'll put this in the show notes, where can people connect with you online, whether it's social media, website, combination of both?
Yeah, the easiest way is via email, mayor@podcasttown.net, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. I hang out there a lot.
Awesome. Yeah, I know we're connected on there and love seeing your stuff. And we'll put that all in the show notes so that way you guys can get connected with Elzie. Elzie, thank you so much for coming on the show. I'm serious. This was an absolute incredible episode. I appreciate you pouring into the audience and sharing your story.
I appreciate you having me. I had a blast.
And thank you again to the audience for tuning in to today's podcast. Please be sure to subscribe to the show and leave us a 5-star review. Sharing our content on social media makes a big impact, especially when you can tag our guests, so that way they can get out and their stories can then be translated to more people and make a bigger impact. Thank you again for tuning in to the podcast today, and we'll see you all next week. Remember, entrepreneurs aren't born, they are brewed.
I'm an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs aren't born, they're brewed. Thank you for listening to Entrepreneur Podcast with your host, Adam McChesney.